All right, so I've never really been good at making videos and talking about politics and stuff because I tend to get wrapped up in anger. But I'm going to do my best here. I want to talk about the political divide that we have in this country and what I think people need to do to retaliate. Let's start with this murder of Charlie Kirk, okay? We saw Charlie Kirk get murdered, and of course we've seen a lot of people laugh in response, basically celebrating his death. And then there's, a lot of people who are apathetic. They don't care. They didn't even know who he was. That is what it is. And then, of course, there's the people who knew who he was or even just had like a vague idea of who he was. And, there's some kind of mourning going on that side. But Charlie Kirk's wife knew who Charlie Kirk was, obviously. And the other day she got up in front of a stadium full of about 70,000 people with about 100 million people on the other side of camera. And she said that she forgives the killer of her husband. Now, when I saw that, I thought there's no better way to try to turn down the temperature, right? Everybody always talks about, we need to turn down the temperature. We need to turn down the temperature. I don't see a better way. I don't see a way that anybody could do that any more clearly than to go out in front of all of these people in front of the world and say, my husband was murdered and I forgive the killer. Not even 2 weeks after, right? Not even 2 weeks later. Let me move this camera because the sun's glaring like that. So she forgives the killer. And the response that I've seen is ridiculous. I've seen, obviously there's people who are like, wow, that's brave, whatever, right? But there's also this part of our political divide. There's people who say, they're criticizing it. They're like, oh, she's acting. Oh, wow. She did it in front of sparklers, in front of fireworks. Kind of like making fun of the whole presentation of Charlie Kirk's memorial, which the mockery continues, which is wild to me. Like, you are willing to mock this woman for trying to say that she forgives the killer of her husband. Furthermore, I saw online a screenshot of somebody who called her a white supremacist. That the only reason she forgave the killer is because he's white. And that her forgiveness is somehow evidence of her white supremacist beliefs. And when I see these things, I just say, you know what? It reinforces something that I felt a long time ago, which is that there is nothing you can do anymore. There's no way that you can shake off these labels that they put on you. This is an ideological dead-end road. It's a philosophical dead end. Once they have decided that you are what they are, there's nothing you can do to change their mind. Once they have decided that you are a bigot, a racist, a white supremacist, you can't even go on stage and try to turn down the temperature, so to speak, and say, I forgive this person, without them continuing the mockery, continuing to call you a racist, continuing to call you a white supremacist, to continue calling you a fascist and a Nazi. There's literally nothing you can do to stop that. Furthermore, you have an entire liberal media class that won't even address that. I have not seen any segments pop up from MSN or CNN, ABC, CBS, any of them that takes time to say, hey, we're gonna show you guys something here. We have this woman, her husband was murdered. She is publicly saying that she is forgiving the murderer of her husband. And this is somebody, maybe it's not the president, but it is somebody who's trying to turn down the temperature, somebody who's trying to calm things down and try to prevent, retaliation and aggravation and aggression. And the reason I use the word retaliation in the beginning of this video is because I recognize that as much as Erica Kirk has said that she doesn't want that, or the way that she has expressed that, I don't see any way of stopping it. So since it's unstoppable, you just have to prepare for it. You have to deal with it. So what we have is we have one, I wouldn't even say everyone on the left-hand side of the political spectrum, but there is a very real presence of people on the left who will never stop calling you a racist. They will never stop calling you a bigot or a fascist or a Nazi. They seem to get some kind of joy and power. They have like this weird moral authoritarianism where they alone get to decide whether you are a Nazi or not. And if you are, then they will use the label that they placed on you as justification for celebrating your death, even in murder. So they will call you a Nazi, and if they don't murder you, if you just die, or if somebody else murders you, they will celebrate it, and they will point to the fact that you've been labeled a Nazi as evidence that your death should be celebrated. Which is fucking crazy. So, the only way that I can think of to deal with that is to apply the same logic. If you're going to use this code of conduct, well, I've cracked the code. Because the code is, you apply a label, bad thing happens to the person that you applied the label to, and you use that label as justification for the bad thing that happened. Fine. Here's how I suggest you turn this around. Label them a demon. And use their words and their behavior and use it to characterize them as truly demons. And say, oh, you're a communist? Well, communists are responsible for the most deaths out of any political movement in the 20th century. You seem to be happy to be associated with mass murder, so kind of makes you a demon. Oh, you support abortion? Unlimited abortion rights? Seems pretty evil to me. Seems kind of demonic. Seems weird how you celebrate the death of millions of people through communism, and now you're celebrating the death of millions of unborn children. That seems pretty evil and demonic to me. Oh, and now you're laughing at the murder of a man? Huh. So now you're celebrating death before life can even really get going. We have a child in the womb. You celebrate the death of the child in the womb. You celebrate the mass murder of humans through the force of communism. And then you celebrate the death of a man who's just talking to people in the middle of a public square. So it seems to me as if you're part of a death cult, which to me is evil and demonic. You're a fucking demon. Now here's the difference between a demon and a fascist or a Nazi. Fascists and Nazis are still human beings. Demons are not. Demons are like cockroaches. There's nothing wrong with killing cockroaches, right? You can kill cockroaches all day long. Nobody's ever going to take an issue with it. There's no moral argument against killing cockroaches. In fact, as humans, we have this innate fear and disgust with cockroaches that when we see them, we understand that we are looking at something that we cannot coexist with. We look at a cockroach and we think that should be destroyed. We cannot live with that. If you see one cockroach, you are like compelled to squash it, right? There's like this inert thing inside you that says, I need to kill that cockroach. And if you see multitudes of cockroaches, you think, I need to deal with that problem, right? If you don't deal with that problem, it's going to get worse. The infestation is going to grow. And if you start seeing magnitudes of cockroaches, you start to have this kind of response where you're like, I can't be here, or they can't be here. Like, this is not an optional thing now. It is mandatory that somebody deal with this problem. So if you've ever walked into a house or some kind of building with a massive cockroach infestation, you understand that, like, you can't just hang out here. Like, this is something that is so disgusting that if you stay here, you might get sick. The smell disgusts you. Their presence makes you angry, right? That's pretty much how I feel about, and I struggle to even say those people, because I don't see them as people anymore. I see them as demons. I see them as demons, and I think the only way to fight back against this constant labeling of racist and bigot and fascist and Nazi, because what they do is they say, you're a Nazi, the only good Nazi is a dead Nazi, right? And then they use that as justification for killing you. So the only option there, because they're never going to change their mind, they're never going to backtrack, they're never going to pull that label off of you, right? The only option then is to give them a worse label. And why demon is worse? Because demons are not human. So there's no moral issue with getting rid of demons. In fact, we have tens of thousands of books and movies and TV shows and video games where the entire plot line revolves around the protagonist, like, mass killing demons. Like, it's heroic work, actually. It's not even that there's nothing wrong with killing demons. It's like good work. It's heroic. The more demons you kill, the better. The more of them you extinguish, the better. You save the village, you save the kingdom, you save the world. You know, the gods smile upon you for extinguishing all of these demons. Now, I know that some people are going to start to think, well, wow, this sounds very dehumanizing. You're comparing these people to demons and cockroaches. I am. Because I have been put into a position where I don't see any other options. You won't let people forgive someone without calling them a racist. If we are at a point where you can look at a grieving widow, her husband was murdered in front of her, and you look at her in her grief, and in her grief, she tries to extend the olive branch and say, I forgive that young man, and you still won't stop calling her a white supremacist, a racist, a bigot, a Nazi. What choice do I have but to consider that you might be an actual fucking demon? When you will not accept forgiveness, what choice do I have but to assume that you are nothing but a fucking demon? Demons don't want forgiveness. Demons don't want redemption. Demons don't want to be saved. Demons are fucking evil creatures, and only thing they want to do is create chaos and create hell on earth. Just like cockroaches, they don't care about forgiveness. They don't have the capacity for it. They don't have the emotional depth for it. They are greasy, creatures that are unpredictable and vile. They spread sickness. They spread plague, basically. Cockroaches and demons, they're fucking gross and they need to be exterminated, right? So when I look at a group of people who seem to celebrate death, all they want to do is create chaos. All they want to do is spread filth, and all they want, and even when you try, to cohabitate with them, when you try to say, look, let's turn down the temperature, and you don't let it happen, what other choice is there? What other choice is there but to consider that you might not be a fucking human being? That you are, in fact, just a demon. And there's nothing wrong with killing demons. I wish I didn't have to say this. I wish that I didn't have to think like this, but the behavior that you have exhibited and the words that you continue to use, the language that you continue to use as a weapon, I don't understand where we can go other than just going to the dead end that you have brought us to. You have brought us to this dead end where there's no other options. If you won't stop vilifying, people and using your self-appointed villainy as justification for their murder, then I don't see any other option but to crack that code and apply the same logic to you. Fine. If you want to call me a Nazi, fine. I can't shake that label from you. But as a Nazi, I'm still a human being. You're a fucking demon. You're not a human being. There is no forgiveness for you. You won't even let it happen. You won't stop calling people racist. You won't stop calling people Nazis. You won't allow people forgiveness. You're a fucking demon. And like I said before, there are tens of thousands of books, movies, television shows, and video games to prove that humans have no moral dilemma with killing demons. None. So, if you're not going to stop acting like fucking demons, you have to be treated as if you are a demon. I wish there was another way, but you won't let it happen. You won't let forgiveness happen, man. What other choice is there? I'm genuinely asking people to answer that question. If they won't even accept a call for forgiveness, where do you go? You are at the point of mutually assured destruction. You are at the point where the only option is somebody has to perish. Somebody has to go. It's one or the other. If there are two opposing forces, and one of those forces has created you in their mind to be a sworn enemy, you are evil, you are a human, you are an evil human, you're a bad person, and bad things happen to bad people, and it's a good thing. This is where we're at. It's a good thing that bad things happen to bad people. This is their philosophy, and there's no changing their mind. You will never not be a bad person, so every bad thing that happens to you is good. This is the philosophy of a fucking demon. This is how evil creatures behave. So if this is your philosophy, if this is how you're going to behave, if this is how you're going to think about the people in the world, then I just have to treat you as if you are a demon. Does anybody have anything else that they can say, well, no, actually we have this other option, we can do it this way? Or am I right? I think I've really tried to come to other conclusions. I've really tried to stay quiet and think about what I'm actually saying, because I understand the implications of what I say. I understand that when I say these things, what I'm talking about leads to a very, very dark place. It leads to a place that is unholy. It is unholy war, where if you start talking about people as if they are demons, if you're dehumanizing them and literally demonizing them, it obviously goes to a place that most humans don't want to go to, because it leads to hell, right? You go to hell if you start doing these things. But if they're going to drag you to hell, what other choice do you have? This is kind of this is where I think our dilemma is we have a group of citizens, I'll say. We have a citizenry who is determined to drag your life into hell where they live. They live in hell. They live in a state of constant chaos and confusion and anxiety and depression and hate. And they don't want anyone to live outside of that realm. So they have already decided that it is their mission to drag you to hell. Do you want to be drug into hell, or would you march into hell and fucking tear it all down? You're really going to be in hell either way, right? So do you want to be dragged kicking and screaming, or do you want to march in prepared? I would love for any kind of liberal, leftist, progressive Democrat to sit here and tell me why what I'm saying is wrong. You tell me how it is that you guys will stop labeling everyone racist and Nazi and bigot. Because as far as I can tell, you can't even do that when a woman stands in front of a crowd of 70,000 people and says that she forgives the murderer of her husband. If you're not even willing to accept that as an olive branch, if you can't accept that as a sign of grace and a sign of trying to not turn this into a full-fledged war, if you won't even accept that, then what is your fucking idea that doesn't involve dragging us all to hell? How are you trying to fix this? What is it exactly that liberal leftists, what is it that you guys do to stop these things from happening? I don't see you guys doing a fucking thing. You want this. You want this because you want to start this shit off. You want to kick it off. I believe wholeheartedly that what you want is you want to see somebody getting their face blown off, specifically probably Donald Trump. You want to see that man with a hole in his fucking head so that you can kick this whole fucking thing off. You want this to happen because, honestly, I think you know that when the shit really hits the fan, that you cannot win. I think you know deep down that you actually will be crushed. And it gives you the ability to keep your victimhood status. You're still going to be like, wow, we're being oppressed, we're being kicked down. You're the ones that are starting it. You're the ones that literally want to see people die. You want to see a man get shot in the neck. You want to see a man get shot in the face. You want people to witness brutal, violent murders so that they will react in such a way that will make you cry. And that's where we're at. I don't see I've tried to look at this from so many different angles and tried to see where you are coming from and where we can go and ways that we can solve this without going down that path. But we are at a dead-end road. I don't see any other way. So, I don't know. I've kind of ranted. I have rambled. I said what I wanted to say. I think the only way that people on the right can fight back is by retaining their humanity, even if it means being a Nazi, even if it means being a fascist, even if it means being a bigot. At least you're still a fucking human. Those people, they're not people. They're demons. They're evil fucking demons. And there's nothing wrong with killing demons. There's nothing wrong with killing cockroaches. That's what they are. Prove me wrong.